You hear me now?
Yes.
Hi everyone, my name is Frankie. I am the recovery coach supervisor for Families Against Narcotics, and I get the pleasure of hosting our home forum tonight. First, before we start, is there anyone attending their first fan forum? Very first one ever. Okay, we're gonna pass out some welcome kits for you guys. So if you can just keep your hands up, please. Thank you. I just want to go over just a few things with you guys. We have a couple save the dates coming up for some fundraisers. June 16th, we have our Run Drugs Out of Town in Fraser. June 18th, thank you, Marie. June 18th, it's at the Fraser High School. If you would be so kind, we do have yard signs on the table out front. If you're willing to put a sign in your yard, if you could grab one of the signs and one of the little metal pieces that sticks it in your yard and take that home with you and help us advertise, that would be wonderful. There's also, we need volunteers. And so we do have a paper that looks like this with a QR code on it that you can just scan with your phone camera and sign up to volunteer. And then we also have the Run Drugs Out of Town registration form up there. So if you're interested in doing any of those things, you can find that on the table out front. August 8th, we have our Hope Classic Golf Tournament at Gowani Golf Club. August 31st, we have our Overdose Awareness Day here at Paradox Church, and that is an amazing event. And then October 4th, we have our Fall Fest at Palazzo Grande, which is a really nice event for the evening. You get really dressed up and you get to look pretty and handsome and have a really good dinner and learn a lot about substance use disorder and Families Against Narcotics. I'm going to pass the mic around so that everyone can introduce themselves. If you could just give us your first name and what brings you to the fan forum tonight. I will start over here.
Hi, my name is Julie. I work for FAN. I'm the assistant coordinator of the food response team, and I'm a person in long-term recovery.
I'm Dee, I'm in recovery.
My name is Amy Bruni. I'm the onboarding and support coordinator for Navigate, our coaching program, and I am also a coach for 41B treatment courts, and I'm here to support our participants, my coworkers, and friends.
Hello, my name is Tracy. I'm a multiple support coordinator for Families Against Narcotics, and I'm also a person in long-term recovery.
Hi, my name is Erica. I'm a person in long-term recovery, and I'm a support coordinator for FAN. I'm here to learn more and show support.
I am Jennifer. I'm an alcoholic in recovery.
I am Amber, and I'm learning to be as good at recovery as I was in misery. My name is Penny, and I'm here to support the dog.
My name is Kim, I'm in long-term recovery. I just started recovery coaching, and I'm a wellness advocate.
We're Cheryl and Al, and each of us is their information.
I'm an alcoholic.
My name's Mark, pursuing recovery. It's been invited by my good friend Thomas.
My name is Thomas. I'm a person in recovery. I also work for FAN as a peer coach.
Hi, my name is Gordy, person in recovery.
I'm Brandon, alcoholic. First day out of rehab, and my peer recovery coach invited me.
Jason, alcoholic, also here with Thomas, peer recovery coach.
I'm Chelsea. I'm a recovering addict.
Hi, I'm Kim. I'm the addict in recovery.
I'm Sue, Kim's mom. I'm here to support her and my son.
Tia in recovery.
And I'm Dean, and I work for FAN. I'm the communications director and operations assistant. I have a son in recovery, and I also lost a nephew to an opioid overdose 5 years ago.
Thank you, Dean. So what I heard was a lot of people in recovery and a lot of family members seeking information and support for their loved one's substance use disorders. So any of our peer recovery coaches that are in the audience, can you please stand up? Anyone who is seeking peer recovery coaching services can speak to any one of these beautiful people. And they can tell you how to get connected with a coach. And then, any family recovery coaches in the audience? Family members seeking support and guidance can get with one of these beautiful women who can connect you with a family recovery coach. Okay, so tonight we have our Director of Clinical Services, Doreen. She's going to come up and talk to you about addiction, identifying and understanding feelings associated with substance use disorder. So if you guys can give her a welcome, that would be great.
How's this sound, okay? All right. So my goal tonight, my name is Doreen, I'm clinical director at FAN, and my goal tonight is to talk about feelings in a way that helps us gain insight, see that, going too fast, that helps us gain insight into our own emotional experiences. What I really want to do is emphasize or demonstrate how a person with substance use disorders and their family members might experience the same feelings very, very differently. And those feelings get tangled up and sometimes knotted up in anger. And helping us understand the feelings, I say name them to tame them, is kind of the basis of what I'll talk about tonight. So for example, a person with substance use disorder might feel frustrated. They might feel frustrated that their family doesn't get it. They don't understand them. Whereas the family might feel frustrated that there's been yet another relapse. They're both feeling intense frustration, but experiencing it very differently. Hopefully tonight, as we talk about the hows and whys and what's behind the feelings, you'll gain some insight, maybe an improved ability to empathize. I strongly believe in the philosophy, you have to name it to tame it, and one thing I know as being a licensed clinical therapist is people, myself included, we very often mislabel our feelings and emotions. They confuse us. They cause internal deregulation, and that comes out in negative ways. If I'm successful in this presentation, you'll hear at least one or two feelings or emotional experiences that have been untangled. And I want you to think about that word through this presentation. And at least I hope to give you an improved ability to identify and regulate those thoughts. So I've selected a set of feelings for the target audience at FAND, and we'll recognize that these are really widely associated with all of mankind. It's not just people and families with substance use disorders. But I think that you'll see my linkage. So here's our agenda. First, I want to talk about thinking about your thinking. We have over 6,000 thoughts every day. Paying attention to those thoughts, sometimes called mindfulness, it's a little bit different, is going to really help in here. We're also going to talk about how substance use disorder creates a family crisis. We know that, but it's the turbulent feelings and emotions and anger that escalate the crisis and keep its momentum going. So we'll look at what to do there. We'll look at why I use the word untangling the feelings, and then I'll talk a little bit about empathy and hopefulness. So here's a little primer. I'm a cognitive behavioral therapist. Very easy to understand. Cognitive just means thinking. So when you hear the word cognitive, all I want you to know is that's your thoughts. So in CBT, thoughts create feelings, and it's your thoughts and feelings that create the behavior, right? So if you want to understand why someone does something, it goes back to their thinking. What were they thinking that created that feeling, and those thoughts and feelings create the behavior. So if I slam a door and I say, my girlfriend really pissed me off, that's a thought. She did something, she didn't piss me off. What I thought about what she did pissed me off. I got my feelings, and my thought and feeling created that action of me slamming the door. The next thing I want you to keep in mind, and I say this often, and you will see it every day if you look for it, how we mix up thoughts, facts, and feelings. A thought, I think my coworker is going to call in sick today. That's a thought. She's not here by 10 o'clock. Maybe she's not coming. I think she's going to call in sick. It's just a thought. It doesn't mean anything. It's an electrical impulse in your brain. Fact, we're all attending the FAN forum tonight. That's a fact. And then there's feelings. I might say sometimes I might feel like a loser. It's just a feeling. I will always validate your feelings, whether they're rational or not, because they come from someplace within inside you, but feelings aren't facts, and thoughts aren't facts. And I want you to keep that in mind as we go through this. Okay, so one of my favorite authors, Brene Brown, says there's nothing more limiting than oversimplifying our thoughts and feelings that have the power to help us understand who we are and what we need. I think that's a pretty powerful statement. Our feelings are important, yet we medicate them away. We push them down. We deny them to ourselves and others. We don't want to share them with our closest friends and family, people that can help us. for a variety of reasons, a lot of which we'll look at tonight. We deny the feelings to ourselves. Most people do this, and doing this is both the cause and effect of substance use disorders. Doing it creates an environment for substance use disorders, and when we're dealing with the disease, it's also a symptom of the disease. So next we'll talk about tangling up our feelings. We can experience many feelings at the same time. They get mixed up and they get confused. So what I hope to do tonight is help you untangle them. And when anger gets involved in this tangled mess, it creates knots. Think of that as a metaphor. I want to talk, before we go forward, about, let's say, something like loneliness. What happens to a person when they're socially isolated and lonely? Loneliness is detrimental to our health, to our well-being. It causes physical and mental problems. High blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes, weakened immune system, anxiety, depression, suicidality, Alzheimer's disease, all stem from loneliness. The antidote for loneliness is empathy. Yet empathy is a widely misunderstood word. We hear people say all the time, to empathize, you have to have walked in that person's shoes, right? And sometimes a person with substance use disorder will tell their family, you don't get it, you can't empathize with me. Not true. I want to clarify the word empathy, okay? Lived experience gives you an increased and improved ability to empathize. That's why our peer coaches are so critically important in our program. But empathizing is a human emotion that can be experienced, not the exact emotion. Let me give you an example. If two women get divorced and they want to meet and talk about their experiences, this woman is devastated by her divorce. Devastated. This woman is like, I'm so glad to be done. They really can't empathize. Yes, they're both divorced women, but their emotional experiences are completely different. To be able to empathize with someone says, I get it, I know how you feel. If someone tells me that they're lost in the woods, they've been lost in the woods, I can empathize with them by saying, that must have been really scary. You must have been really frightened. I connected and empathized with them on the human experience, not on the fact that I've walked in the woods and gotten lost as well. Does that help clarify that? Widely misunderstood. Guess what, we did that. Okay, so anger is the linchpin for the feelings I'm going to talk about tonight. Anger means someone has done something wrong, and you might have a right to feel angry. Anger is an okay emotion. It's not bad, right? Someone does something, you feel something, and you feel angered. It's not a problem. Stage 2 of anger is rage. That's the problem. How you express your anger can become problematic. And then the third stage of anger, and this will make a little more sense in a minute, is resentment. Resentments are really easy to understand. Hanging on to unresolved anger. Anyone that's in the program knows resentments are toxic. We try to get rid of them, process them, move on. Really what you're doing is you're getting rid of those negative feelings that have caused anger, or that have come through in anger that you've held on to, that are resentments. But here's, I'm really not good at this. I better not quit my day job. So hiding behind the anger is a phrase we use. We have emotions, we have feelings that we're not in touch with, and we get angry. Many years ago, I was doing an anger management group for a group of about 60 male parolees. And we were talking about this poster. This is one of my favorite tools and has been one of my favorite tools for the last 10 years. How many of you have seen this before? Okay. Really, you can get this on Google, by the way. Just Google what's behind the anger. I love this, okay? What it says is that we express anger, but there's always another emotion behind it. There's feelings behind the anger. In this group, this one guy says to me, you know what? If my girlfriend's angry at me, I really don't care. But if she says, honey, I'm disappointed in you, that really weighed on him. And I'm like, really? That's interesting. So we started to talk about that. And what I learned that day by my group is that when we talk about our feelings, we are heard so much more clearly than when we just express the anger. Yet, today, our society is more angry than it's ever been in our history. Anger is one of the most predominant emotions experienced by Americans today, and that's really scary. And what's going on is we're losing sight of all these feelings that are behind the anger. So I've broken them down specifically as they pertain to people with substance use disorders and their families. So fear, worry, and anxiety, they're different. They're all on the poster we just looked at. And they often come through as anger. So if my son, when he was a teenager, came home late and he walks in the door 2 hours after curfew and I go, where the heck were you? I'm angry. He's gonna be like, sorry I'm late, whatever, and maybe just go up to his room, maybe slam the door, right? If he walked in and I said, I was so worried. I was scared when you didn't call. Or I'm disappointed that you didn't call if you were gonna be late. It's likely that would get a much, much better response. Do you see how that worked? Anger is most often met with anger. The ability to express your emotions, the ability for you and others to recognize what's driving the anger or verbalize why you're angry is golden. So fear, worry, and anxiety. They're different. I believe I can safely say that families that have dealt with substance use disorders have experienced all of these. Can you remember fighting with your loved ones? Can you remember the arguing? Can you remember acting out angrily? And were you worried? Were you scared? Were you fearful? But what you really showed was anger. And maybe you even got caught up in that anger to a point where you made yourself sick, where you couldn't sleep, where you couldn't eat, where you said, I'm so angry. That wasn't what was going on. What was going on, possibly, I wasn't there, you were scared. Fear, okay, let me back up, I'm sorry. Worry is the cognitive thought about the future. Worried is not a feeling. I feel worried, we say that, but it's really the thinking about something in the future that causes anxiety. So worried and anxious go together. Fear is concerned about the here and now. So right now, I am in fear, screwing this up, not really. Worry is the thought. If you control the worry, you control the anxiety. If you want to understand what the fear is about, focus on the here and now. We use the term future tripping in recovery. Most of you have probably heard that. That's worrying about things that we have no control over or that haven't happened yet, and it creates anxiety. These get problematic when they come out as anger. So families worry about what will happen next. We worry, will my loved one with substance use disorders get through this? The worry creates anxiety. please look at your worry and anxiety and see if they're productive. And if they're not productive, recognize that you don't have control. And maybe the best thing to do is just set it aside. Sometimes anxiety is a warning, and it is productive. So for example, if I'm standing at a bus stop and I feel anxious, and that anxiousness has me put my purse under my shoulder, or makes me keep my chin up and be aware of my surroundings, that's productive anxiety. If I have anxiety because I have a test tomorrow, that's okay. That's productive anxiety, because hopefully it's going to make me study, get a good night's sleep, eat something in the morning, I'll do better on the test. So understand that there's productive anxiety and unproductive anxiety. Here, we want to focus on what comes out as anger. Fear that something is not safe. Fear that you're not safe physically or emotionally. And we become angry when we don't feel safe. Here's an interesting point. We experience social and physical pain in the same parts of our brain. And the potential exposure to each kind of that fear or pain signal derives fear. Physical and emotional pain hits the same part of your brain. That's pretty impactful. Frustration and disappointment. I'm going to keep this really simple. Why is that? There we go. Frustration and disappointment, unmet expectations. You have an expectation that life was going to go a certain way, or someone was going to do things a certain way. My parents will let me come home. My kid will go to college. We have spoken and unspoken expectations. And when those expectations don't pan out, we become frustrated and disappointed. That's on us. I want you to hear that very clearly. When you are frustrated and disappointed, you can't blame it on the other person. That's about your unmet expectations. And you need to keep that in check. Because almost always when we're frustrated and disappointed, it's because we don't have an ability to control something that we didn't have control over in the first place. We had an expectation that things would go a certain way. And when they don't, there you have it. It sounds overly simplified, but it's not. A few months ago, I was reading a book called Maybe You Should Talk to Someone. It's kind of a funny book. And in the book, she gives the happiness formula. And the author says, happiness equals reality minus expectations. And I thought, that's ridiculous. Well, think about it. And I was like, oh yeah, oh yes. And then I started to run it through with my girlfriends. And then I started to pass it through to my patients. What do you think? And you know what? I have not had anyone yet disagree with me. We create unhappiness, I don't know that happiness is it, but we create unhappiness by having expectations that are not in line with reality. When you're unhappy, you're angry. The tangled thoughts, are you seeing the trend here, guys? How we tangle up those thoughts and they get knotted up and then we get this big mess. I wear this chain purposely. Do you guys ever have a long necklace that gets tangled and then you sit there and you try to pull it apart to detangle it, or some thread or string? Really, all you have to do is find the right knot or the right thread, and if you get that right piece, the rest of the work is easy. It becomes less tangled. You don't have to unravel every little knot. Things start to unravel if you pull the right string, if you pick the right knot. Your feelings are like that. So understanding the frustration and the disappointment is right in line with that. There's a quote by Elizabeth Gilbert. She says, "You're afraid of surrender because you don't want to lose control, but you never had control. All you had was anxiety." And if you think about that, the anxiety is based on worry and fear. The worry and fear is based on an expectation that you have some control over the future, and that gets all tangled up, and it's all connected. So here today, we're trying to give you a little primer to pull things apart so that they untangle more freely. Fear is uncomfortable feelings, anxiety, depression, frustration, disappointment. When things are uncomfortable, we get angry and we act out. Angry at ourselves and angry at others. Okay, so the next one is guilt, embarrassment, and hurt. Guilt is really interesting. People say, "I feel guilty that I did this. I feel guilty I told my son he couldn't come home. I feel guilty that I had to leave I had to break up a relationship with my boyfriend." When someone tells me they feel guilty, the first thing I ask them is, "Did you do something wrong?" And very often the answer is no. And why do you feel guilty? I want to suggest to you that sometimes guilt is confused with compassion. You feel bad for what that person's going through. You feel, not bad, you feel compassion for what that person's going through. And we confuse that with guilt. So if my boyfriend's not good for me and I break up with him and I feel guilty, I feel compassion because I know I hurt him. Or I hurt someone, but I didn't do anything wrong. Do you see the difference? Embarrassment. Embarrassment for ourselves, embarrassment by others. Those are when our reality doesn't meet social norms. The irony with substance use disorders is 1 in 3 families is affected by substance use disorders. Yet in the crisis, we feel embarrassed. Because of the stigma, we have a difficult time talking about it, exploring it, getting support for it. That comes from embarrassment. And then there's hurt. When you hurt someone, or someone hurts you, purposely or without intent, we have a pushback response. The pushback response is to hurt back. The pushback response is to, you hurt me and I'll hurt you, one way or another. Really be careful of that. When you see someone that's in pain or that's acting out, I want you to stop and consider, maybe empathize, what they might be feeling. What's behind the anger? They're probably hurt. Parents do this often in the normal course of parenting. Relationships cause a lot of pain and hurt, intentional and otherwise. That's acted out in anger. And the anger fuels the crisis. I don't want to keep repeating myself, so I'll move on from there. When we understand what's going on, when we name it, we can tame it. Most of these I've talked about on some level, and it is evidence-based that these feelings are often demonstrated through anger. I want you to watch yourself and watch how you express your feelings, and I promise you, if you find a way to talk to people from the feeling perspective, you will be better heard. Anger breeds anger. And I'm not talking deep rage, I'm talking to someone. You're disappointed and you're lashing out. you're going to be met with the same in return. Again, find this poster on Google. I find it incredibly helpful. I think that I want to kind of wrap up and do some talk about sadness. I don't have a slide for it up here tonight. Sadness is not depression. Sadness can be a symptom of clinical depression, but often we're sad, and it's a normal, common emotion. In my experience, and I have no statistics, when I do anger management, especially with men, but not always, most of the people that I've seen in anger management, the men that I've seen, are depressed. No, excuse me, my mistake. They're sad. They're sad. And that sadness comes through as anger. That knots up their feelings. Anger at self and others. The last feeling is grief. Again, sadness and grief aren't on my slides. Grief means loss. We mostly associate grief with death or loss, but there's a lot of grief. Grief can be experienced for the loss of the life you thought you'd have, for the person you thought you knew, for the family you thought you had. Grief if you lose a job, a lost relationship. Those are normal. And you have to allow yourself that ability to grieve, or that opportunity to grieve, because grieving is healing. When it gets caught up in the anger cycle, it is not. So that's a lot to take away, and I want to kind of wrap up. Emphasize you need to feel your feelings, to understand them at their roots. When they show up as temporary anger at yourself and others, you have to look deeper. When someone you love or you care about, and even if it's your neighbor, is angry, consider what's going on. I have another thought that's like this, I'll share real quick, totally unrelated. When we talk about if someone's lying to us, I have a quote that I use in my mind, didn't know it when I was raising my kids, but it says it's not about the lie, it's about the why. Right? We tend to say, I know they're lying, right? Ask yourself, why are they lying? That's the question that needs to be answered. We get so caught up in fighting what that lie was about, or what the anger is about, we lose sight of what's driving it. Proving to someone they lied is useless. Understanding why they lied is golden. One last feeling. Hopelessness. Hopelessness is the belief that tomorrow will be the same as an unsatisfactory today. It's an emotion that often prolongs substance use disorders. Hopelessness arises out of a combination of negative life events and negative thought patterns, particularly self-blame, and the perceived inability to change our lives. Hopelessness is a feeling. Hope is a way of thinking. Hope can be learned. Hope, I believe, is contagious. If you lose hope, so will others around you. If you have hope, sometimes I'll say to my patients, actually mostly if a married couple comes in and they'll say, do you think there's any hope for us? I say, I need one ingredient, hope. Do you have hope that maybe we can salvage this marriage? If they say yes, then we're a go. If there's no hope, I could be the best therapist in the world, there's not a darn thing I can do. But hope is contagious. In contrast, when someone comes into my office and they're hopeless, I'll say, I'll lend you my hope for a little while. I have hope that we can beat this. I have hope that change is possible. And I'll hold that hope for you until you find hope. To have hope for ourselves and others, we have to have a commitment to a new way of thinking about what we want. We need to do a reality check and have a willingness to start over and over and sometimes over and over again without shame and without blame and without anger. I'll end with one more quote by Kierkegaard. Hope is a passion for what is possible. I have a lot of hope that we can end the stigma of substance use disorder. I have a lot of hope that we will get through this opiate epidemic. I have a lot of hope that FAN every day makes a meaningful impact. And I have hope that you got something from this presentation. Thank you.
Doreen? We have one of our peer recovery coaches, Thomas Hunter, who's going to come up and share some of his insight on substance use disorder with you.
Close to my mouth? I got a big mouth, but I don't need it. But anyway, my name is Thomas. I'm a person in recovery.
Hi, Thomas.
Can you guys hear me pretty good?
Yeah.
Good. When I was asked to do this, and I seen it on Facebook what it was going to be about. I was excited about it because I come to realize that in my own life, what got me to use it in the first place was the way I felt about myself. The way I thought about myself that was inherited by things that happened outside of me that I took personal. And I became uncomfortable with who I was, and I took everything that happened to me as a kid from other kids like it was something wrong with me. So I started to develop a self-hatred for myself. And it's not something I knew then, it's something I'm learning as I go in recovery, why I did a lot of the things and why I do some of the things that I do. And if I think negative about myself, I'm going to cause myself some kind of harm, or I'm not going to give myself the best treatment all the time. And I had got caught up in a habit of the way I thought about myself and how I thought about people because of what people did to me. And also the feelings of thinking my dad treated my brother different than me. I started thinking like it's something terribly wrong with me. No one seems to want to be around me or like me, so I must be this terrible person, which I never did anything to earn that as a kid. When I started to use, and using, man, it becomes real tricky as I go on. As I go on, and I'm still trying to unveil a lot of things that go on. As a matter of fact, I go to my mom's every Tuesday now, and a lot of times we talk about how it was and how we are now. And I know that a lot of times when I was using, the way I felt about myself multiplied with self-hatred because of the things that I was doing. And inside, I knew what I was doing was terribly wrong. And I didn't want to do it, but I didn't know no other way. I was caught up in something, and not just the drugs and alcohol was I caught up in. I was caught up in this pattern of thinking about myself, that I deserved nothing more than what I was getting. And then all the time causing all this pain and hurt to my family, who loved me dearly, but because of what I was doing, couldn't get past. It was tricky. My mom was telling me the other day, it was tricky for her because she loved me so much, but the things I did to hurt her, she couldn't get past the hurt to where she could, because what an addict needs most, even now to this day, is love. Love can heal a lot of things, but it's difficult when you have family members that I've hurt so much to give me that love. And I think that's the great thing about recovery, peer coaches, family coaches, is that we're able to come somewhere and start to let love start to heal the way we think. In recovery, we tell people we're going to love you until you learn how to love yourself. Because early in recovery, I still had a lot of negative thoughts about myself. Even to this day, sometimes I don't think I'm doing enough, or I'm not doing good enough, or somebody can say something and I'll take it personal. And how I navigate through that now is I stop. And I think about what I'm thinking about. And your feelings can be really deceitful. Feelings are not the facts. I always tell a lot of guys I work with, and my sponsor tells me all the time that feelings does not dictate what's really going on. And I used to be like, well, I'm feeling a certain type of way. What do you mean? He said, what are you thinking about that? Whatever's going on, let's change the perspective of it. And a lot of time it has to do with me. I'm thinking some type of way about me. And it causes me to feel bad about me or the situation. So today, the way I navigate around these feelings is by talking to other people. I gotta be careful of the way I think about people, myself, and anything that's going on in my life at the time. One of the greatest things in life, man, is being able to sit down with my mom and my brother and get an understanding of what they were going through. Because I was one of those addicts, y'all just don't understand, it's not that easy. Y'all just don't understand, but I didn't want to understand how difficult it was for them. All I knew is that I needed somebody to love me. I was at such a lonely, lonely place. And early in recovery, it can be so lonely and so isolated. You can be around a room full of people and still feel by yourself. And it all stems on how we think and the perspective we have, how I think and how the perspective I had of myself and people. When I start changing the way I think about myself, and I start changing the way I think of what's other people, I don't take things so personal. And it's not about me all the time. I was just talking to Rodney outside, and he gave me some insight on some things that I never even thought of. And it's like it's a continuing process. But it's the disease of addiction, we say in recovery, it means dis-ease. Before I start using, I was totally dis-ease with myself. I was always full of fear and consumed about what's going to happen. I was always waiting for something bad to happen because I was abused by kids in the neighborhood. So I was always on guard, and I was never at ease, and I was never comfortable with myself. And it all stemmed, I like what Doreen said, think about what you're thinking about. Because I had a therapist tell me that before, and I used to be like, how the heck am I going to think about thoughts? How am I going to do that? That don't even make sense to me. Until I start practicing it. And it's not easy still to this day, but it's so much clearer when I can just stop for a moment. Okay, why are you feeling anxiety? What are you trying to control? One of the biggest things early in recovery is sometimes today, if it's something I really want to happen, if it's going to happen next week, I'm trying to figure out how to make that happen right now today. And there's no way in heck that I can figure out how to make something happen 2 weeks from now today. But I'll spend my whole day in my mind until I'm full of anxiety, and now my attitude rubs off. Now I'm talking to friends I normally talk to crazy. You know what I mean? I'm in an attitude because I'm caught up in my mind. This all starts in our thinking. This disease operates in our thinking. And no matter how much time I get so clean, no matter what goes on in my life, if I'm not monitoring what I'm thinking about myself mainly, and watching my perspective on how I deal with situations, I can find myself somewhere I don't want to be. And it doesn't always have to lead back to drugs and alcohol. It could just be in a very lonely, dark place. And I didn't have to be there because I didn't want to stop for a moment. I don't ever want to get to a point where I don't understand that this whole thing is about being at ease and being comfortable. Being as comfortable as you can be in what situation you are and accepting it right where I'm at. I have a hard time with that still sometimes. Accepting my life at 55 right where I'm at. Now, if I just sit there and I dwelled on and start comparing myself to other people 55, well, I've been coming around the program for 25 years and I only got 3 years, or I start comparing myself to guys like Don, how you think that's going to make me feel about myself? How do you think that's going to make me feel? How am I going to be productive throughout the course of a day and be of use for myself, my family, and everybody if I'm spending my whole day saying, well, I've been here, Robert met me in the penitentiary, and I've been around here forever, and I only got 3 years, he got 25. That's the stuff that this disease will have us do. In our minds, I'll start comparing myself to that, and I'll start beating myself up all over again. I'm never gonna be nothing. I should have did this. You ain't should have did nothing but been right where you're at. And it's important for me to do that. I have to be careful of my thinking because it can go there in a heartbeat. It can go there in a heartbeat. Or I was sitting talking to my big brother the other day before he left. And, I asked him, how did you deal with me all those years? Because he was the only one that would stick and he was the only one that stayed when things was really bad, that would come get me, that would feed me, that would come visit me when I was locked up. And I asked him, and how did you do that? And he said something Doreen said. He said, I didn't look at what you were doing. I wondered why you were doing it, because you were such a good person. I didn't understand why you was doing it. So I didn't look at the act of what you were doing, because if I had did that, I wouldn't have been able to do the things that I was able to do for you. I had to ask myself why. What is hurting him so bad that he would live like he's living? And it helped him to be able to help me. He was my anchor, and he still is to this day. So this disease affects everybody that's involved. Like, I can't imagine the hurt that be my mom. And a mom loves you more than everything. There's no greater love than a mother's love but God. And to cause her the pain that I caused her, where she couldn't even properly love her son the way she needed to and wanted to because of how I made her feel. And to be where we're at today, because we have gotten some therapy. She didn't do much. She did 2 classes and she said she's straight. She said, I'm not going to pay no lady to tell me nothing about your crazy self. And what happened was, I start opening up, she started opening up on the Tuesdays that we go play chess with her and stuff. And she said she just could not get past what she was seeing. It wasn't the money that was stolen. It was that she felt neglected. She felt robbed of a privilege to love her son. And it angered her. It angered her, but it hurt her. Angry, that thing I said, she used to get that in the penitentiary all the time. I was told that anger is a secondary emotion. It has to come from somewhere else. And when I find myself getting angry now, and my mom says she does this now, when I find myself getting angry now, I ask myself what's really going on. And 9 out of 10, I'm hurt. Here go a big one for me to admit now. I'm jealous, I'm envious of something, or I'm worried about something. Those are the main 3 for me right now. It's not so much what I thought it was. And it can throw me to a whole nother area that I don't want to be in. This addiction thing can only be, we have to take a look. I have to continue to monitor the way I think about myself, people, and my circumstances. And no matter how long I be in this thing, how I'm here in this world. And as the family members, man, it's a difficult, I can't even speak on that just from the experience of my mom and what she has told me and what my brother has told me. I lost my sister 3 years ago. And I remember her when I was using, I would get clean for 90 days, move to a recovery house and get a good job. And she's like, you just gotta be the dumbest person in the world. I was like, why? She said, because you'll come right out of the penitentiary, out of a treatment facility, get a great job, and just go mess it up. Like, how do you do that? And that used to anger her to the point that she didn't even want to talk to me. Because they can't understand what we're suffering from. And we can't, or we will not understand or accept. Like, I would not accept what my family was going through had partially to do, or mostly to do with everything I was doing. See, I had a hard time accepting anything I did to hurt you. All I could see is how you were hurting me by not letting me do what I needed to do, what I thought I needed to do, which was probably to manipulate and use you to help me to continue to do what I wanted to do. But I couldn't see that. I could not see that at the time. And this recovery thing is learning how to unveil all that and to get an acceptance of who you were and who you are right here, right today. One of the biggest obstacles with some of the participants I work with is getting them to accept right where they're at today. I remember when in treatment and early in recovery, I would tell myself 1,000 negative thoughts. Just beating myself up constantly about what I didn't do, how I wasn't a dad, how I wasn't, constantly. How can I be productive if I'm continuing to tell myself terrible things about what I did? One of the things I try to do is just to stay right where I'm at today. I still don't do everything right, but if I kept going back the next week saying, well, you didn't do X, Y, Z right, I can't fix what I did. All I can do is do the best I can do today. And the hardest thing with my participants is getting them to accept right here today, and trying to find the positive out of the day. I tell my guys all the time, and I used to get up, and I still do at times, I get up every morning and I tell myself, I love you today. You deserve the best life possible today. You deserve to take care of you today. Don't expect people to do what your job is. And I tell myself that so I can continue to retrain my thinking about how I always thought about myself. So I tell guys all the time, man, you gotta get that squirrel out of your head telling you all this terrible stuff. Get up every morning and tell yourself you love you, even if you don't feel it. Feelings can be so deceiving. They will lead you somewhere you don't even want to be. A lot of the decisions I've made in my life has been based on how I felt. When I first started using, it was based on how I felt about myself. I knew going to Cass and Henry to smoke crack was not a good idea. But I thought that would be the best solution for what I was feeling and what I was thinking about myself. I thought it couldn't be no worse. Today, I'm just grateful to be a part of this process. Not only in recovery and a part of FAN, but to live long enough to get to a place where I have some understanding of what this disease is about. It's really not. The drugs is just a symptom to what's really going on. It all starts in the way we think, because thinking triggers everything else. The feelings, the actions, everything comes from the way we think about ourselves, somebody, or what's going on in our life. One of my biggest frustrations is not accepting things for how it is right now. So I'm grateful FAN gave me this opportunity. I hope that helps somebody. Just monitor the way you think about yourself.
Thank you, Thomas. I just wanted to mention a couple things before we wrap up. We are always in search of volunteer angels. If you are interested in becoming an angel for Hope Not Handcuffs, you can go to the Families Against Narcotics website and sign up for angel training. We also offer free naloxone training. Those trainings are listed on there as well, but every month prior to the FAN Forum, what time does the naloxone training start? 5:45. 5:45. Right here in this room, and they will give you a free naloxone kit as well. You can find any of our programs on our website too. You can request a peer recovery coach or a family recovery coach under our Navigate program. And we are always actively searching for family recovery coaches and peer recovery coaches. And I think that that's it for our forum. Oh, I forgot to mention, I'm sorry, we have a library in the back. When you first come in, you can check out any of those books. Please just bring them back the next time you come or when you finish. There's also a table with information about FAN and other organizations locally that might benefit someone here. And I think that's it. Thank you all for coming out.
Spain.